My name is Demon Phoenix 237, creator of the Well-Run Tank build. Husband to a Canon Yennefer, father to a murdered Euphoria build, and I will have my damage per second back, in this build or the next. Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here? Hello everybody, Demon Phoenix here with another build video. Don't ask me why I did that gladiator skit at the start, I just kind of felt like it. Moving on! We've got a Bloodbath build, and this is a slightly different take on the builds usually because there was never any reason to use anything other than Euphoria, really, before patch 4.0, and now Euphoria is still a little better than Bloodbath, but I figured we'd give it a go, try some of the other mutations, and look at some of these slight differences that you can get with this build. So Bloodbath is basically all about getting hits and avoiding hits yourself. So it's a bit like a MC Hammer build, you know, can't touch this. So what we have to focus on is a lot of red skills, because the red attack tree skills are the ones that go in the center for the mutations, strength and synapses slots when you're using Bloodbath. And we are focusing on the damage and the dodging. So we've got the two Satanite Steel Sword and either Geschäft or Arendite as the two swords, and as you can see on the right we have got the Manticore gear. So there you could go with either Geschäft if you want some of those different things, or maybe Army if you got the good version of Army, but really you would be looking at Arendite. We've got the Manticore armor. This build would be exactly the same on a first playthrough as it would on a New Game Plus playthrough, so all of this would be the same. So we've got 3 pieces of the Manticore gear, and then we've got the Nilfgaardian's Guardsman gauntlets, and we've got Levity, which makes all of that light gear, because this is focusing on having a lot of damage and we want that cat's cool techniques. You could have the legendary Manticore gauntlets or regular Manticore gauntlets in a normal playthrough, but the plus 50% critical hit damage for an offensive build is a really strong reason to have those Nilfgaardian Guardsman gauntlets. That's why they're probably the best gauntlets, especially on most offensive builds. You can see that we get a lot of damage here, and there are 2 alchemy setups that I'm going to be going through. One with delayed recovery, which is similar to the setup for the metamorphosis build, because that's extremely strong in patch 4.0. But let's just go over the red skills first. We've got all of the red skills going down to the light tree, the fast attack tree, sorry, and we've got the strong attack tree. All of the strong attack trees. I actually put counter attack on this build. You could try and use counter attack a little bit. It knocks an enemy over if you get a counter attack and your next attack does 30% damage, and you'll be guarding and parrying a lot more with this build. Because we have levity on the chest piece, you could also go with that arrow deflection skill as well. I think that's quite useful. Razor focus, we don't have resolve, because whilst we want to get the adrenaline up quickly, we also want to be avoiding taking hits. So if we're taking hits, then we've failed on that account already. You could go with magic trap if you wanted, but again, it's not really in the spirit of the build in terms of the synergies. So for the general, we've also got cat school techniques, because we've got levity on the armor. All of our things count as light. We get 100% critical hit damage. And there are 2 alchemy setups, so you could either go with delayed recovery, and we'll be covering that in just a minute. So delayed recovery, extremely strong, it's using all the potions. On both versions I do have fixative, hunter instinct, killing spree and synergy. Those are, you know, some of the absolute best alchemy skills. Synergy makes those greater red mutagens be plus 60% for the ones that are matched up with the skills. Killing spree guarantees you critical hits after you kill opponents, and that synergizes with Hunter Instinct, which increases your critical hit damage by an absolute ton when you are targeting the enemy with the correct oil used. This is the other version, and I actually think this is slightly better for this particular build. So the Metamorphosis build had all the potions, and then it triggers the decoctions using Metamorphosis ability. But here, if you switch out a delayed recovery for acquired tolerance and you add fast metabolism in one of these slots, you can use 2 or 3 decoctions, and then you can use potions on top with fast metabolism. And I actually think that's slightly better for this build. The main reason being that although you're not using that toxicity to get damage with Euphoria, having the Ekimara decoction is very useful. If you use the version with delayed recovery, then you should always have Superior Blizzard, Superior Swallow active. So Blizzard does the slowdown effect, which is very powerful, and Swallow heals quite a lot. But this is a really glass cannon type build, so the Ekimara decoction converts all of the damage that you're dealing, which is massive damage, into healing, and is just a little bit more consistent it's a little bit easier, because if you're using the delayed recovery version, it can be catastrophic if the superior swallow falls off. You can use the troll decoction as one of the decoctions that we use in here. There are a couple of options alongside the Ekimara one. You can use the Arakas decoction if you want to have a little bit more resistance, just so you don't die in like a hit if you get hit by some enemies. But what I decided to settle on was that I like the Wyvern decoction in this build. The Wyvern decoction is never really used, but each blow landed increases your attack power until the fight ends or you take damage. So for that first portion of the fight, you're always going to want to be avoiding damage as long as possible, so that Bloodbath builds up its hits, because Bloodbath works by having a lot of each hit increases your damage by 5%, and that's the whole point of this build, is to, you know, get in touch, avoid stuff, get your hits, and this is the build in action. So you can see the little Bloodbath count, sort of damage counter up on the top left, so where you've got your potions active, you can see we've got 90% at the minute, so that's when each hit you get, that increases by 5%. So you want to be keeping Quen up at all times. Superior Tornial is very useful for that, and you can see that this is the delayed recovery version, so you've got Superior Swallow, Superior Tornial as your immediate ones that you really need if you're using the delayed recovery version, because you want to be using Superior Tornial to keep your stamina high and be able to keep Quen up, because it's very important to be dodging. Fleet-footed I did try on this build, so fleet-footed is a skill that means that you don't take any damage at all, but I didn't find it that useful. As you can see, this is a clip of being at the 250% and that 22,000 silver sword strong attack critical hit damage, 10,000 for the about 10 or 11,000 for the fast attack critical hit damage. Considering you're going to be doing crits a lot, it's a huge amount of damage, so if you can get those high bonuses, it's very good. But even when you're starting a battle, you can see here we've only got like a couple of hits at the start of the battle. We get hit, so we need to keep Quen up, but you very quickly get those hits in, especially with Whirl. We've got Severance on both of the swords, and obviously that little bit of slowdown was just deadly precision as well, which can get you instant kills whilst your adrenaline is high. So even if you do lose the Bloodbath bonus, once you start getting hits again, it builds up. And basically, if you were to use this build, it's about dodging, getting those hits in. It's just to show that some of the other mutations can work. You don't have to be having metamorphosis. People have still been relying on Euphoria in like a lot of the build videos, but Euphoria is not as strong as it used to be. Metamorphosis is very, very strong, obviously now, and there are some other really good ones, but just to show that you can do a few different things with this sort of build if you want to try something a bit different, or if you're just starting Blood and Wine normal playthrough and so you're earlier in the mutation trees, you don't have metamorphosis, it can be quite a good one there. So again, just an example of fighting some monsters instead of humans. This is the delayed recovery version, but it's very, very similar if you've got the decoctions active instead. You get the healing from the potions, or you get the healing from the Ekimara decoction. You will get absolutely rocked if you get hit with this build. This is all on deathmatch, so although the damage is extreme, you need to be prepared to keep Quen up and be getting dodging on. One thing I always forget is to actually guard with the left trigger, because I never guard and parry, because I was either so used to having builds that are focused around not getting hit, or focused around taking all of the hits and it not mattering with my optimized builds from before patch 4.0. I never guard because it damages your swords. Your swords get damaged and have to be repaired a lot more often, especially on deathmatch and especially after patch 4.0. But using this build, you would need to get into the habit of guarding, especially if arrows are giving you a problem. So with archers and things, you might want to have that skill that deflects the arrows when guarding. That's very useful for this, to try and fit on there, maybe over strength training, because you're not using the heavy hits as often as using fast attacks in this build. But as you can see, even if you take a hit, you will lose the Bloodbath bonus, but then you will start building it up again, so it's not once per fight like the Wyvern decoction is, and it's not the end of the world if you do take a hit. One thing that's quite interesting to remember with this build is that you do have access to all of your bombs, and some difficult enemies like these arachnomorphs, they're very mobile. You want to be using your bombs. Stuff like Salmon Bomb is very useful for archers when you're fighting humans. Just be mindful of the fact that you have got your bombs available to you. They're very good at stopping enemies and letting you get close enough to use that pretty lethal damage bonus from Bloodbath. And Bloodbath can actually be a lot more damaging than Euphoria, as you saw with the clip earlier of the 250 percent, if you hit that maximum percent fighting a big group of enemies, then it can be more damaging than Euphoria, because Euphoria tops out at about 170 something percent, I think. I'll be redoing a Euphoria build at some point, but yeah, it can be really good for that. So again, make sure you're using all of your bombs. You can set things on fire with the Dancing Star Bomb because you don't have sign intensity on this build, so it's good for that. And you can also use a couple of the different bombs that you might not use very often. The Puffball can be very useful because you can actually, with either the Delayed Recovery or the Fast Metabolism build, get that superior Golden Aureole, so you can actually heal yourself and damage the enemies by throwing a superior Puffball and then getting in that Poison Cloud, taking the damage yourself, and with the superior Golden Aureole it will actually heal you. So bombs are good in this build just to get those hits a little easier. And you can see that the damage really does rack up very quickly. You'll be doing a lot of critical hits because we've got the Killing Spree and we've got the critical hit damage bonuses, which is why we're using the Manticore gear. This is a build that you could actually talk me into using the Feline gear for as well. If you wanted to take out some of the alchemy things, you can you know, focus on just putting even more red skills on, use the Feline build. But just beware that if you do the Feline build, it's even squishier than this one. So you can see here, this is still with the Manticore gear, which does have decent resistances to monsters, and if you get hit a few times you get rocked. So something a bit different, using Bloodbath and showing a couple of the differences there. Just wanted to show that you can have a very basic amount of alchemy skills and still get good use out of them, going with either Delayed Recovery and all the potions, or using the Fast Metabolism on top of a couple of decoctions, without actually still needing to have height intolerance, which, you know, is a lot less useful. So I hope you enjoyed that Bloodbath build. Please like, comment and subscribe. I will be back with more builds and more content in the future. Happy New Year to everybody in 2023, and I will speak to you again next time we are on the path.